I really didn't want to attend. The invitation hit my inbox exactly at 9:47 a.m., titled, Dinner with the Donnies Friday 7 p.m. It was an official email from HR, but with a small smiley face emoji tacked on, as if that made it feel less formal, more personal. After dedicating 22 years to growing CoreLogic Dynamics, from a tiny tech startup housed in a rented warehouse into a $120 million analytics company with clients all over the world, I was being asked not to join a board meeting or a call with investors, but to have dinner with the CEO and his family. My name is Mia, and I was the very first hire at CoreLogic. I wasn't simply an employee, I was the company's backbone. When I began, our client roster was just 3, and the only printer we had jammed if you even glanced at it the wrong way. I created our client systems, oversaw vendor contracts, managed finances until we could afford a CFO, and pitched deals that kept the company afloat. Doug Donnelly, our founder, used to call me the quiet engine, saying I kept the wheels turning when everything else seemed ready to collapse. But recently, things started to change. Doug grew more distant. He skimmed my updates rather than truly reading them. Our once-weekly Monday meetings shrank into bi-weekly calls that often never happened at all. And then the interns arrived, loud, young, spouting buzzwords like confetti. I felt the chill before the window even opened. So when that dinner invite came, I knew exactly what was coming. I just didn't realize how biting that cold would be. The venue was a trendy rooftop restaurant downtown, famous for overpriced scallops and dramatic mood lighting. I wore a soft navy blouse and the pearl earrings my daughter gave me last Mother's Day. I looked the part, respectable, professional. As always, Doug was already there, standing next to a long table dressed in white linen with his wife Patrice, and their daughter Harper looked like she'd stepped off a runway. Blonde, perfectly polished, not a wrinkle in sight. Her linen pantsuit made her look like the living embodiment of the LinkedIn CEO stereotype. "Mia," Doug greeted, arms wide with a bright smile. "So glad you could make it." "Wouldn't miss it," I said, smiling back as I slid into my seat opposite him. My stomach twisted in knots. The dinner started like any executive event. Too much wine and hollow compliments that meant nothing. Harper asked about the company's early days, her voice light but dripping with condescension. "It's so funny imagining you all working out of a garage or something," she said with a giggle. I smiled, but it wasn't funny. Doug cleared his throat. "Actually, Mia saved the company twice in those early years. She landed the defense contract that earned us our first $1 million. Harper smirked. "Well, every company needs its building blocks." I should have left then, but I stayed, curious to see how far they'd push it halfway through the main course. Halibut with saffron rice. Doug folded his hands on the table like a man offering peace. "Mia, we've been doing some long-term planning," he said carefully. "You've been vital to CoreLogic's success. But as we prepare for the next phase, we think it's time for new blood, fresh energy, a new vision." I kept my face blank. "Harper just finished her executive leadership program at Stanford," he added, pride dripping from his voice, as if I hadn't already mentored several Ivy Leaguers. "She has exciting ideas about modernizing the brand and pushing us into blockchain and AI." "Impressive," I replied evenly. "What's the timeline?" He looked relieved. 6 weeks she'll shadow you at first. We'll announce it formally after the quarterly call. And there's a generous package. We want you to feel valued." That's when Harper leaned in, fork poised, eyes shining. "Time to step aside, Granny," she said with a smirk. "Let us take over." The table went quiet. Even Patrice's fork hovered midair. I held her gaze a long moment, then smiled, completely understood what they didn't know, and never bothered to check, was that CoreLogic wasn't just a company I helped build. It was a company I actually owned. Doug had given me 5% equity years ago. When we couldn't afford to pay raises, I never sold it, and had been quietly watching ever since they thought I'd forgotten. Doug gave me 5% back in 2003. 2 years after CoreLogic began, we were nearly broke. I just spent a sleepless night fixing a billing mess that almost cost us our biggest client. Doug walked into my office, eyes red and anxious, handing me a 1-page agreement. "Mia," he said, "I can't pay you what you deserve now, but if we get through this, I want you to have a piece." At the time, I barely looked at it. It felt more like a thank you note than a contract. I was exhausted, loyal, and foolishly hopeful. But years later, when we incorporated and took on our first outside investor, I had a lawyer review everything I'd signed. That's when I learned it wasn't symbolic. It was real equity, ownership, and voting rights. I never mentioned it, never bragged, never reminded Doug I didn't need to. I was woven into the company's fabric, or so I thought. But as core logic evolved, so did Doug. He stopped seeking my input and chased buzzwords. Instead, consultants came and went, but those who admired Harper's LinkedIn profile stuck around longer. Suddenly, value wasn't loyalty or results. It was optics. And I no longer fit the image. The following Monday, I walked into work like nothing had changed. I smiled at reception, grabbed my usual black coffee from the steam-hissing machine, and checked my email. My access was still intact. For now, no announcements, just silence. Luis, our data engineer, stopped by with his cautious look. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Just a little dinner with the Donnies." He winced. "I hear rumors are flying. People are confused." I met his eyes. Let them wonder. I wasn't ready to reveal my hand yet. Instead, I logged into the shareholder portal. My 5% was still there, untouched, with new investors bringing fresh funds. That tiny stake had grown into something significant. I downloaded every document. Stock agreements, board voting history, executive pay records. Then I arranged a private 30-minute meeting with Doug's executive assistant. She blinked, surprised, but agreed. "I'll see what I can do." When I walked into Doug's office on Wednesday, he looked up tiredly. "Mia," he said, motioning to the chair across from him. "How are things?" "Curious," I answered, sitting down. "You never mentioned the equity I still hold." His smile faltered. "I thought you'd cashed out by now." I placed the printed shareholder agreement on his desk. "Unless I'm mistaken, I still have voting rights." Doug folded his hands. "Mia, this doesn't have to get messy. We're offering you a generous way out." "I'm not walking away just yet," I replied evenly. "I'll help with the transition. I'll do it gracefully. But if Harper plans to restructure the company, bring in her own team, or sell assets, I want a voice in it." He frowned. "You're holding on because of sentiment." "No," I said firmly. "I'm holding on because I built this." I left before he could say anything else. Let him stew on that evening. I pulled open a dusty file cabinet in my home office. Inside were relics from the early days, sketches of the original architecture, client pitch notes, and the very first UI mock-ups drawn on napkins. Then I found something I hadn't seen in years, an NDA signed by Doug in 2005, acknowledging that several proprietary tools I developed came from my previous consulting work. Details most people forget, but I never do. The next day, I met Melissa, an old friend and top-tier IP attorney, for coffee at a quiet bistro near CoreLogic HQ. I laid everything out. "Can I protect this?" I asked. She smiled, flipping through the pages. "Mia, you own at least part of this. And combined with your equity, you've got leverage they never saw coming." I exhaled, feeling the weight of 2 decades pressed down on my chest. "They think I'm just a stepping stone." "Then let's show them," she said, "that even stepping stones can crack foundations." By week's end, whispers started. Why is Mia still here? Why so calm? Why hasn't Harper taken over yet? I smiled, walking past. They invited me to dinner, expecting to write my ending, but they forgot. I'm writing the next chapter. By Monday, Harper had settled into my office. Not officially, but she was there early, coffee in hand, with a forced smile like we were best friends. Her questions were sweet on the surface, but loaded underneath. She asked about vendor relationships and back-end systems, but I saw it in her eyes. She wasn't here to learn, she was here to replace me. "Do you always approve budget requests manually?" she asked, flipping through a report she barely understood. "Always," I said. "It catches errors. Automation doesn't. And predictive tools are only as good as the data behind them. We still have legacy clients using decade-old systems. Garbage in, garbage out." She blinked, clearly unfamiliar with the idea, then smiled. "You're a bit old school, huh?" There it was. I just smiled back. Old school kept this company afloat through 3 downturns, but feel free to learn the hard way she didn't like that. By Wednesday, she'd organized her first strategy meeting. Without me, she sent invites to the leadership team, except one name, mine. Louise forwarded me the invite. Thought you'd want to see this. Subject line: Vision 2.0, Core Logic's future begins now. Cute. I opened the agenda and immediately saw her plan: new branding, hiring freezes, operational shifts, and potential outsourcing of back-end services. I laughed aloud. Outsource the back-end? Half our client value lies in back-end support. Clients don't come for shiny dashboards. They come because we keep their systems running when everyone else quits. She didn't know the real company, only the version her father talked about over Sunday brunch that afternoon. Doug dropped by my desk, something he hadn't done in years. "Mia," he said, putting on that politician's tone, "I want the transition to go smoothly. Harper's already gaining a lot of attention." "Visibility isn't the same as knowledge," I said flatly. He hesitated. "You've always been the soul of this place. You invited me to dinner to take the soul out of it." Doug flinched slightly. "This isn't what it looks like." "Then what is it, Doug? Because I built the systems, I kept investors calm, I held the company together, while you took sabbaticals in Napa." Silence. "I know about the Series C dilution," I added. "You're prepping for acquisition." His eyes widened. "How?" "I've been around long enough to read the winds." He looked down, not denying it. "We had to make hard choices?" "The board wants fresh faces, a new story, a story that doesn't include me." He hesitated. "We're offering you a package." "I'm not interested in your package," I said firmly. "I'm interested in what I'm owed." I walked away before he could reply. Back in my office, I emailed Melissa I wanted provisional patents filed by week's end, not just the original architecture, but all improvements I'd made over the years. I wasn't sabotaging the company. I was drawing a line. Anything with my fingerprints would be legally protected Thursday morning. I found Harper at the whiteboard, mapping a new client retention model. Lifted almost word for word from a strategy document I'd written 6 years earlier. She must have gone digging in the archives. When she noticed me watching, she smiled. "I'm just modernizing," she said. "Your work was a great foundation." "No problem," I said, stepping closer. "Just remember to cite your sources. Plagiarism doesn't look good on quarterly reports." Her smile faltered by Friday. The IT team was whispering. Vanessa, my operations lead, pulled me aside in the break room. "They're nervous," she said quietly. "Harper's pushing changes that don't make sense, and Doug's silent." "Because he's not in charge anymore," I replied. "He just doesn't realize it yet." Vanessa looked at me. "What are you doing, Mia?" "Setting the table," I said. "For what?" "For the storm," I said. "But don't worry, I'll be smiling through it." That night, I sat on my porch with a glass of red wine and my laptop open. The emails were drafted, one to the remaining 3 board members, reminding them of my equity and the shareholder clause requiring unanimous consent for structural changes. One to Technova Systems, a company we nearly acquired last year and who I'm on good terms with, and one to myself with the subject line, leverage. I was saving everything just in case I didn't want to fight. I wanted respect, but if they pushed me, they'd discover just how old school I really am. The official announcement came on Tuesday morning during the all-staff meeting. Harper paced at the front of the auditorium with a wireless mic, like a TED speaker, while a slideshow filled the screen with stock photos and vague slogans. Vision, velocity, victory. Doug introduced her with a warm smile, calling her a breath of fresh air. Harper beamed, thanking him like she'd just won a beauty pageant. Then she addressed the staff. "It's time for a new chapter," she began. "A younger, leaner, and more innovative core logic." There it was. Blunt and unsubtle, I sat in the second row, arms crossed, scanning the faces around me. Most tried to mask their unease. Vanessa looked shocked. Luis wouldn't even meet my gaze. Then Harper gestured at the projector, and a slide appeared titled, Organizational Streamlining Plan, Phase 1. My jaw clenched. The slide outlined restructuring, cuts to back-end operations, outsourcing IT functions, merging departments, and worst of all, a legacy management transition, meaning me. They didn't even bother to say my name. After the meeting, Harper found me alone in the hallway, confident and calm. "I hope you'll be graceful about this," she whispered. "It's what people expect from veterans." I tilted my head. "You mean women who've outlasted 3 CEOs and built the systems holding this place up?" She just smiled, as if I were being difficult. That afternoon, HR sent an official separation package, a hefty check, an NDA, and a clause requiring my full knowledge transfer. That's when they pushed too far. I stormed into Doug's office, package in hand. He looked ready. "Mia," he began, "you let your daughter stand up there and pretend this was her idea. You let her call me obsolete in front of everyone, and now you expect me to hand over my work like a loyal old dog." "It's not like that." "It's exactly like that," I said, "and just to be clear, I'm not signing anything." "Not today, not ever." He sighed. "Then you're forcing us to terminate." "You're forgetting something," I said, digging into my bag. "I still hold my shareholder seat. If you try to force me out without board approval, you'll breach the original agreement." Doug's face turned pale. "You think Harper's ideas are shiny and new, but they're dangerous. Cutting back end will cripple your infrastructure, and that predictive automation model she keeps pushing, it doesn't even comply with our client contracts, you know that." He leaned back, silent. "I'm not trying to sink the ship," I added, "but I won't go down with it." That night, I met Vanessa and Luis at a quiet diner across town, sliding manila envelopes to both. "What's this?" Vanessa asked proof. I said, "What we built isn't just lines of code, it's intellectual property, documented, time-stamped, and traceable." "Are you going to sue them?" Luis asked. "Not unless they force me," I replied. "But I want you both protected. Harper's planning a second round of cuts." Vanessa nodded slowly. "Her PR team's prepping the press release. They're cleaning house before the acquisition." CoreLogic's being packaged, streamlined, turned into a shiny object. Luis looked up. "Are you going to stop it?" "No," I said. "I'm going to shape it." Over the next 3 days, I worked like a ghost. Quiet, unassuming, but precise. I met Melissa again and filed a cease and desist over the reuse of proprietary modules in Harper's new systems. I sent the board formal notice that I'd vote against restructuring unless a neutral third-party audit was completed. I met Technova's CEO for lunch, just a casual chat, but when I mentioned CoreLogic's leadership changes, his eyebrows shot up. "They're positioning for a sale," I said. He nodded. "That explains the talent reaching out to us." I smiled. "If you're interested, I can tell you which systems to protect and who really understands them." By Friday, Harper was under pressure. Her voice had a sharper edge in meetings, her smiles tighter, her confidence cracking as people she thought she could lead started looking back at me. I just smiled because the storm she tried to unleash? I'd already built the levees by Monday. 3 of Harper's flashy initiatives had crashed. The vendor migration she promised to cut costs stalled due to integration problems, thanks to Luis quietly pulling the plug on a compatibility patch he'd written 2 years ago. The rebranding was on hold after legal flagged trademark infringement from a smaller tech firm I knew well. I might have tipped them off. The new predictive analytics model crashed the moment it ran on live client data, garbage in, garbage out, just like I warned. But Harper doubled down. She called a mandatory meeting for all department heads. Her tone clipped, forced smile masking frustration. "We're going through growing pains," she said. "But I assure you, we're on the right path. Disruption is never comfortable." From the corner, I raised an eyebrow. "Disruption works when there's a parachute. You've cut every safety net this company had." She smiled tightly. "Thank you for your feedback, Mia." Doug sat silently, no longer trying to hide his role. A figurehead slumped in his chair, letting his daughter steer the ship toward an iceberg. Afterward, Vanessa caught me. 3 longtime clients called today," she whispered. "They're nervous and threatening to leave if service quality slips again." I nodded. "Let me guess, Harper hasn't returned their calls?" "She thinks they'll wait. They won't." That night, I opened my laptop and sent a brief email to Daniel Renair subject. Follow-up from our lunch. "If your board is serious, now is the time to act." Daniel, CEO of Technova, had been circling CoreLogic for months, waiting for the right moment. I wasn't trying to sabotage anything, just handing them a mirror to see what's happening behind the scenes. The next morning, I found Harper lounging in my old office, feet on the desk, tossing a stress ball. She didn't look up when I knocked. "Can I help you?" she asked, like I was an intern. "I need a few minutes." She sighed. "Make it quick." I stepped inside, calm as ever. "You're losing the company." That got her attention. "I know you think people follow you because you talk innovation and branding, but this place wasn't built on slogans. It was built on trust, relationships, and systems that actually work." She stood, eyes narrowing. "Are you threatening me?" "No," I said. "I'm giving you a chance." "To what?" "To stop pretending you know what you're doing." She scoffed. "My father is being pushed aside by his own board." "You're a figurehead, just like he is." Her bravado cracked slightly. "You want to lead?" I said, "Fine, lead, but don't burn the foundation down just to prove you can light a match." She didn't reply. I didn't expect her to later that day. Doug requested a private meeting. No Harper, no assistants. He looked exhausted. "Mia," he said, sitting across from me. "What do you want?" I took a breath. I wanted recognition. Not a payout, not a fancy title, just acknowledgement. He rubbed his face tiredly. "The board is rattled. They've seen the instability. They know your name is still tied to every critical system." "Good," I said. "They handed a multi-million-dollar company over to someone who thinks legacy experience is a liability." He lowered his voice. "And Technova?" I smiled. "I had lunch with Daniel. The offer's real, but I haven't made my decision yet." Doug looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in months. "You could walk away from all this." "I could," I said, "but I won't. What I built matters. If they want to keep using it, they'll do it on my terms." That evening, Vanessa texted me. "Client X just sent an official letter of concern to the board." Things are shifting. I replied with 2 words. Hold steady. Harper had the microphone, but I had the stage. And with just a few more moves, I'd be the one rewriting the story. The boardroom was packed, not just in number, but in tension. The kind of heaviness in the air that makes you hold your breath, pretending calm when you can barely breathe. It was a Thursday emergency session. The board had called it the CEO, interim leadership, department heads, and me, Doug, sat at the far end, looking a decade older than 2 weeks ago. Harper was beside him, nervously flipping through a leather notebook that held no useful notes. Across from me sat the man I'd met for lunch days before, Daniel Renaer, CEO of Technova, wearing the polite, detached look of someone sizing up a patient before deciding whether to operate or walk away. Celeste, the board chairwoman, opened the meeting. "Before we begin, we need to address the elephant in the room." She nodded toward me. "Mia has raised several contractual, technical, and operational issues that were undisclosed during our CoreLogic transition assessments." Heads turned. Doug's face hardened. Harper glanced at me, realization dawning. She'd stepped into something far bigger than she expected. Celeste continued. "Per our original shareholder agreement, any restructuring of executive functions requires unanimous board approval if it affects stakeholders holding over 3%. She looked at me. "Mia, would you like to speak?" I stood, steady, calm, grounded. "I'm not here to create chaos," I began. "I never wanted that. I'm here because for more than 20 years, I gave everything to this company, and somewhere along the way, people started treating that as a weakness. Expendable." Harper's jaw clenched, but I didn't meet her gaze. "I don't want a crown or a title, but I want my work respected. I want my contributions acknowledged, and I want whoever leads this company to understand innovation means nothing without a foundation to stand on." Silence followed. Daniel cleared his throat. "We've been monitoring this closely," he said, gesturing around the room. 3 major clients have expressed concerns. 2 have paused contract renewals. Internal reports reveal CoreLogic systems aren't as autonomous as once believed. His eyes shifted toward Harper. She froze. Daniel turned back to the board. "Our offer stands, but depends on leadership stability. Frankly, we won't proceed if the current transition remains." Translation. Harper had to go. Doug tried to speak, but Celeste raised her hand. Let's take a 10-minute recess. People murmured as they moved into the hallway. Harper stayed seated and looked at me. Really looked. I didn't mean to destroy anything, she said softly. I met her eyes. You wanted to prove yourself, I get it. But you came in swinging without asking what we were swinging at. You treated people like obstacles and me like a footnote. She swallowed. What happens now? I leaned in. That's not up to me anymore. It's the board's decision. 10 minutes later, we returned. Celeste stood and announced the verdict calmly. Effective immediately, Harper Donnelly is relieved of all transition leadership duties. Doug will remain in an advisory role through the acquisition period. Mia Carter, you will lead a transitional advisory team reporting directly to the board and prospective partners at Technova. I didn't smile. I nodded later that week. I signed my consulting contract. Triple my old salary, full autonomy, and authority over systems integration during acquisition. Harper left quietly. No goodbye email, no farewell party. Doug shook my hand in the lobby one last time. I'm sorry, he said softly. I know, I replied. 2 months later, CoreLogic officially became part of Technova. Most staff stayed. I handpicked a new leadership team. Vanessa became operations director. Louise took over engineering. Half the company reported to people I'd personally trained. I didn't move back into my old office. Instead, I worked from a small home setup overlooking the lake. Twice a week, I walked barefoot on the deck with coffee, watching the sunrise while client dashboards loaded smoothly in the background, systems I designed still humming quietly beneath the surface. One evening, I received an email from Celeste subject, Legacy Mia. What you did, the way you handled it, we've never seen anything like it. You didn't just protect your legacy, you reminded everyone what real leadership looks like. I sat staring at the screen for a long time. This wasn't about revenge or power, it was about value, knowing it, owning it, and refusing to let anyone take it from you.